being laughed at in a courtroom, judged for your appearance, and told you don't belong. But what happens when the person everyone underestimated turns out to be the smartest one in the room? This is the story of a poor farmer who shocked everyone, especially the judge who mocked him. In a small, dusty courtroom in rural Mississippi, tension fills the air. Elijah Johnson, a poor black farmer in his late 30s, stands nervously in front of the judge. His faded overalls and calloused hands make him look out of place in the formal setting. Across the room sits Robert Hargrove, a wealthy white landowner in a tailored suit, smirking confidently. The dispute? A piece of land Elijah's family has worked on for generations, which Robert claims belongs to him. Judge Whitaker, a stern white man in his 50s, looks down at Elijah with clear disdain. "Do you even know what a contract is?" He sneers, his voice dripping with condescension. The courtroom erupts in laughter, and Elijah's face flushes with embarrassment. Robert leans back in his chair, clearly enjoying the spectacle. The judge's bias is obvious, and the odds seem stacked against Elijah from the start. Elijah tries to explain his side, but the judge cuts him off repeatedly, dismissing his words as irrelevant. Robert's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man with a polished demeanor, presents a stack of documents that seem to support their claim. The judge nods along, barely giving Elijah a chance to speak. It's clear to everyone in the room that this isn't just about the land. It's about power, privilege, and who belongs in a system designed to favor people like Robert. Elijah's hands tremble as he clutches a folder of his own documents. He knows the truth, but the judge's mocking tone and the laughter from the gallery make him doubt whether anyone will listen. The challenge isn't just proving his case. It's overcoming the prejudice and assumptions that everyone, including the judge, has already made about him. The courtroom feels like a battlefield, and Elijah is fighting not just for his land, but for his dignity. As the laughter in the courtroom fades, Elijah takes a deep breath and steadies himself. He opens his folder, revealing neatly organized documents and handwritten notes. The judge raises an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the farmer's preparation. Elijah begins to speak, his voice calm but firm. He references a specific clause in the original land deed, one that Robert's lawyer had overlooked. The room grows quiet as Elijah explains how the clause clearly states that the land was granted to his great-grandfather in perpetuity, meaning it could never be sold or transferred outside the family. Robert's lawyer tries to interrupt, but Elijah holds up a hand. "Your Honor, if I may," he says, his tone respectful but unwavering. He pulls out a weathered, yellow document, the original deed, and points to the signature at the bottom. "This is my great-grandfather's mark, and this clause here ensures the land remains with his descendants." Mr. Hargrove's claim is based on a fraudulent sale that violates this agreement. The judge leans forward, his earlier smirk replaced by a look of curiosity. Elijah continues, methodically dismantling Robert's case. He cites state property laws, referencing specific statutes that support his argument. He even points out inconsistencies in the documents Robert's lawyer presented, showing how dates and signatures don't align with historical records. The courtroom, once filled with mocking laughter, is now silent except for Elijah's voice. Robert shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his confidence visibly wavering. His lawyer scrambles to respond, but Elijah is prepared for every counterargument. He pulls out more evidence, letters from local historians, land surveys, and even testimony from elderly townsfolk who remember Elijah's family working the land for decades. Each piece of evidence is presented with precision, leaving no room for doubt. The judge, now fully engaged, begins to ask questions, not to mock, but to understand. Elijah answers each one with clarity, his knowledge of the law evident. It's clear that this isn't just a case of a farmer defending his land. It's a demonstration of how deeply Elijah has studied the law, turning what seemed like an impossible fight into a masterclass in legal argumentation. The courtroom, once a place of ridicule, becomes a stage for Elijah's quiet brilliance. The tide is turning, and everyone can feel it. The tension in the courtroom is palpable as Elijah reaches the final piece of evidence. He holds up a faded photograph of his great-grandfather standing on the land in question, dated over a century ago. "Your Honor," he says, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of generations. "This land isn't just property to me. It's my family's legacy. And this photograph, along with the original deed, proves it's been ours since long before Mr. Hargrove's family even arrived in this county." Robert's lawyer tries to object, but the judge silences him with a sharp wave of his hand. Judge Whitaker, who had earlier mocked Elijah, now stares at him with a mix of disbelief and respect. He examines the photograph and the deed carefully, his earlier bias crumbling under the weight of Elijah's evidence. The courtroom is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Elijah then delivers the final blow. He pulls out a notarized affidavit from a retired county clerk, confirming that the land records were tampered with decades ago to erase his family's claim. "This," Elijah says, placing the affidavit on the judge's bench, "is proof of fraud. Mr. Hargrove's claim is built on lies, and I'm here to set the record straight." Robert, now visibly sweating, slumps in his chair. His lawyer whispers frantically to him, but there's no recovering from this. The judge takes a long moment to review everything, his face unreadable. Finally, he clears his throat and addresses the room. "Based on the evidence presented," he begins, his voice firm, "it is clear that Mr. Johnson's family has rightful ownership of this land." The court rules in his favor. The courtroom erupts in murmurs of shock. Elijah doesn't cheer or gloat, he simply nods, his expression one of quiet relief. As he gathers his documents, the judge looks at him with something akin to admiration. "Mr. Johnson," he says, almost apologetically, "you've proven that true knowledge knows no boundaries. This court owes you an apology." Elijah walks out of the courtroom, not as a poor farmer, but as a man who stood his ground and fought for what was right. The key moment isn't just the ruling, it's the shift in power, the moment when everyone in that room realized they had underestimated him. And that realization changes everything. If you've ever been underestimated, let this story remind you that you're capable of more than people think. Hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire.